I'm Kim Bastable, and I'm the director of this program. So we're kind of letting people join in as we get started in this webinar. We're very thankful that we have some of our students here that can talk about the programming that we have at Florida. And I also have my adjunct professor, Doug Cash, with me as well. So again, I'm Kim Bastable, and kind of my question might be, who am I and what's the story on this program? So we'll start there. I've been a USPTA and PTR pro for 30 years, but before that I was a player for the University of Florida. Played in the 80s, and if you look very closely, you might even see a wood racket in one of these pictures. I noticed that earlier today. I date myself considerably to have played with a wood racket as a freshman in college. So I guess that tells you I'm old. It may not tell you I'm wise, but hopefully I'm a little of both. So I did play for the Gators in the 80s, and then I got into the world of sports. I started as a sports writer for the Kansas City Star newspaper. Kansas City is my home, and it's actually still my home, even though I teach for the university. And then I got a business degree from Florida as an undergrad, and then I got a master's in education with a specialization in positive coaching. And it was after that I really got passionate about leadership and psychology. Got back to my university and worked with them to become a professor in their online sport management master's program. And it was while I was in that program as a professor in their online programs that the USPTA reached out to Florida and wanted to do this Director of Racquet Sports curriculum. And since I was a certified pro and someone sitting in the seat at UF that was able to be the leader of this program, here we are today. So I am wise enough to know that I may have been around a while, but I don't know everything. So I've got a great adjunct, Doug Cash, who knows a lot more than I do in many, many ways of this. He's an incredible leader in the industry for over 40 years, was a COO for Tennis Corporation of America, and then has run his own business, a consulting business called Cash Flow Tennis. So it's just an incredible honor to have him beside. And he is directly involved in the program in the finance area in that he speaks to you. You get a couple hours of his time just straight up, which is a high dollar value. And Doug is directly hands-on with everyone in the program. So that's a definite perk. And again, I'll tell you more about the specifics of the program as we go along here. So why did this curriculum get built in the first place? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Over the years, there's just been no formal education to ensure that a person was ready to be the leader. And you could teach a lot of lessons, and people have been teaching over the years, and you might be really good at teaching. You might even spend, 30, 35, 40 hours a week teaching, which probably assumes you can do it pretty well. But the bottom line is any job in this industry is bigger than teaching. And it's beyond that. It's so beyond that, and you can see this list of things. There's just countless things that we as a pro do that have nothing to do with forehands and backhands. And this stuff is vital to our jobs as leaders, and something that you really have to be hanging around the industry previous to this course, or you've spoken to people in the industry that would teach you these things. But you're expected to be the expert in the room, for instance. You're expected to run high-level special events. Well, that's not the same as teaching. You're expected at some levels, depending on big, small, or otherwise, to maybe know something about budgeting. And even if you're running a small program where you might just have a couple of courts and a couple of pros under you, there's budgeting, there's finance that goes on. So you big or small, you've been asked to do many of these things in your path through your career. So what we realized is that there had to be a way that we could teach these things and solidly ensure that teaching pros knew these things, because as they go running bigger programs, they need them. So what builds confidence? What makes us feel that we're strong to do our jobs? And the bottom line is that it really has to do less about what you know and more about the perception of what you know. And we need to build confidence by actually helping you really realize you do know quite a bit more than you maybe thought you did. And this a program really validates. In some ways, I think it teaches, but in other ways, I think it validates. And if you've been around the industry long enough, you probably know more than you thought. And you can say, I have that knowledge. I feel strong in that area. And maybe it'll identify also a few areas where you might not be as strong. But this is a thorough, deep dive. And it was created by a curriculum committee of very expert people in our industry. So these people have been, in these positions of leadership for years, and they sat down for better part of a year in meetings to decide what should be included in the curriculum. And these are people that have done it. They're on the ground. They've been in it for years, so they really thoroughly knew. And that curriculum was written by Stephen Theret, who sadly has since passed away. But he created the questions for the quizzes and the articles, and using the knowledge of this committee, that they decided these are the things that someone needs to know in order to execute the job of Director of Racquet Sports. And then this curriculum is now being used by both USPTA and PTR to create the certification of a Director of Racquet Sports. So if you're already certified as an elite level pro, then once you take the course, you turn in your completion certificate and you become a certified Director of Racquet Sports, which is something that's being sought on many job applications even today. Even though this program has only been around since June of 2021, it's already being noted as an important element to the hiring process. So what was interesting is when I took on this project and I started mentioning it to people around, I'd run into clubs and I'd say, we're going to do this program. What do you think? Some pretty fascinating reactions happened. Wow, learning on the job has its benefits, but if you're not in the role of a director, you do not get the full picture. And I've known lots of people who were tennis pros who had good bosses, but they had no time to sit down with that boss or that director and really learn what they do. So yeah, it's nice to be on the job, for sure. It's better to be on the job than maybe learning out of a book. But it's just a time constraint and a struggle. And then, of course, you don't have the validation and aren't sure that you actually learned everything you needed. And then I had one reaction. It was like, finally, maybe people will stop saying that tennis is not a real job. So as the UF is putting this curriculum within our Masters of Sport Management program, we're finally validating that this is a very, credible career, and even hopefully convincing a lot of moms and dads that, their kids should grow up to be leaders in tennis, and they should teach along the way and maybe teach as directors, but certainly as a credible career track. So here are the ways that UF delivers this program. One, we deliver it through, I said, our Sport Management Masters. We've taken the curriculum that came from the committee, we've divided it into 2 courses, and that is now part of the 36 college course hours that are within our Sport Management Master's degree. For that program, you would have to have a bachelor's degree and apply to the university. It usually takes about 2 to 3 years to complete because you usually take maybe 6 hours at any one semester, and the classes run on semesters, which means they're 16 weeks long. But we are the #1 ranked sport management program, online sport management program in the country, so it's maybe well worth your investment of time and money. The courses that are included are something like this within that Sport Management Masters, the thorough deep dive and finance, law, marketing, event management. Things, though, are related to sports. I call this the MBA of the tennis industry because we really do talk about sports-specific information in these types of courses. There's a finance course within the Masters of Business, but that's not specific to our area in sport management. And then we cover things like psychology and coaching methodology and high-performance coaching and athlete development. And we have these rackets directorship and rackets industry specific courses within our Sport Management Masters. But not everyone wants a full master's, and it is quite an investment, money and time. So we took those racket sports courses out and just made them this certificate course. No undergraduate degree is required. You don't have to apply to the university. You just have to have 3 years of industry experience at minimum and a professional certification. And then you take those 6 course hours, which are blended together in this one course, and it's self-paced on your own. And we know that you are working full-time while you're doing this. So if you're unable to dive into our course for a couple of months, maybe because you're busy with your summer season, there's no problem with that. It's all self-paced. We just ask that you finish within 1 year. And then this course is currently priced at $2,395, which is considerably less than the $21,000 for the master's program. So when we started this at UF, I said, I was the one that kind of was asked, why would we do this? Why would we dive in? And I thought, well, there's some small reasons that this could be beneficial in the industry. I mean, I knew from my experience in 30 years in the industry that we needed to make people smarter. We needed to grow their career opportunities and just create confidence in those who graduate. But I don't have small goals, and UF doesn't have small goals. UF usually does things in big ways, and we want to make the industry better. This is not about making a handful of people better, though that's important. But if we can make this have real mass and mass appeal, we're going to make the industry better. We're going to create a whole network of leaders that can talk to each other. So you're not out there alone in any position. And we can create a level of certification that employers start demanding. And they actually already have. It's listed in many of the job openings for directors today. But we want to make that even more. We want this to be a certification that is that's certainly looked to, and it makes the people that go through this course even more likely to get those positions. And then we really want to create competence because our industry has gotten complex. You all know that post-COVID, it has been a very big boom in tennis, and that coupled with the addition of all the complementary racket sports and the demands of the customer, they want pickleball or they want padel or they want this or that. It's made, pleasing people just more complex. I think in a good way. I think it's been good for our industry to broaden from more tennis, but it's definitely more complex. So we address that in the course. So in the first part of the course, just to break down what we cover, in our first course that in the master's we call the rackets industry, we cover this organizational dynamics of the industry because there are different entities, the country club, the racket club, the park and rec. There's different demands of those. We talk about that. We talk about the history of tennis because I believe it's important that we not only teach the game, we teach people to have a passion in the game, and many people have forgotten our long and really storied origins. And then we talk about all the complementary racket sports, many of them that have crept on the scene, many of you maybe have not even heard of yet. There's a facility operations module that talks about all the court building, the air structures, the lighting, the pro shop, just all kinds of operations information that, of course, varies by club, but we cover all those subjects in the facility operations mode. We do touch on technology, which is vast, changing, just always something to stay on top of, but it's important. I mean, many of us never heard of a QR code before COVID, and it's quite a part of our life now. So we have to stay up on the technology and how that applies to tennis. And then there's also a module on personal brand development because our goal is to help you all get into the right seat in our industry. There are different types of jobs and just, one job's not the same. And if you don't get in that right seat that matches your personality, the type of part of the country you want to live in, the size of club you're going to thrive in, the level of player that you might be working with on a daily basis, all kinds of things. So we want you to actually learn how to look for the right job and then convey and sell yourself so that you can get that right job. So there's a personal brand development section of the course. And then in our second course, the Rackets Directorship, the second half of the certificate course, we cover human capital, and that's hiring, building culture, just all things leadership, how to make, we have an entire section with another small book that talks about all of these subjects in depth because this and probably finance and accounting are the two areas that most tennis pros have very little knowledge or experience in. So we do take a deep dive in this and the finance and accounting, which is run by Doug Cash, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Then we cover marketing and sales aspects, which right now you might feel like you don't need. There's people coming out of the wall, but we do. We're going to have to be prepared, and we obviously have events and things within our clubs we need to market. Very important. And then maximizing the customer experience. We really, we want people to just bring their friends, and we prefer not to have the leaky bucket that's been in our industry for a long time. So just some numbers about the course. 64 are in our certificate course. 17 of those have graduated. 2 of those have gone on to begin the master's, which we think is fabulous. That's something I was unsure how that might work, but I was hopeful there'd be people inspired to learn, and I'm excited. And we even have one on the call who's inspired to continue on this and do his master's. The average number of years in the industry of all of the 64 people is a little under 15. Now, again, you can be as low as 3 and still be admitted to the course, but it's interesting that we've got quite a bit of experience as well. So we have probably 10 of those 64 are under 8 years experience. So we do run the gamut. 10 of them are women. And these are the types of titles of people that are in the course. We have some who are already directors, some head pros, some staff pros, owners, pickleball coordinator pro, whatever. Lots of different job descriptions of currently and lots of different reasons to get into the course, whether it's to move to another position or just move up at their club or just do their job better. No travel is required. Everything is done online. You just will be you and your computer, except we try to make it feel like you, your computer, and everybody else in the class, as well as Doug and myself. If you dedicate 3 hours a week, it's approximately 8 months till you'll complete the curriculum. That's the type of time investment. Of course, the master's degree would be semesters, so you'd be at about 2.5 to 3 years usually. And just so you know, once you complete this course, the USPTA is granting 90 continuing education credits. So that's a big bonus for you all that are trying to rack up some CEUs. So the details we teach with lectures, articles, readings. That's what you'll have in each module. There's some real world projects and then a few quizzes, as well as a midterm and a final. So those are multiple choice questions, and you have to earn 70% to get your certification. And then the learning experience is fully online, as I said, self-paced, and we do create as much social connectivity as we can. If you want to join, you will be applying for the certificate course, or you can apply for the certificate course at any time. You'll just need to include these 5 elements into the portal that we've provided. And if you have satisfied the requirements of the admissions of the elite level, which is also P1, 3 years of industry, you've got a recommendation by someone in your superior you've worked with that verifies that you have leadership capability, and Safe Place certified, then you'll likely be entered into the course. If you need to upgrade your certification, that would be something you need to look into before you enter the course. You can upgrade your certification as you take the course, but you must be completed at an elite level before you have completed the course. If you choose the Masters of Sport Management, you do have to apply to the university. It's a different application process. Classes are on semesters, but I will encourage anybody wanting to do that, we encourage the certificate course first, because we do allow you some credit for that certificate course toward your master's, and then you can, the ultimate end, the master's will end up costing you less. So just so you know, this is probably the first step, even if you do want the master's. All right, so let me introduce to you the people we have on the call that are going to help you understand this, because I give you the nuts and bolts, but they're the ones that can tell you more. Doug, our adjunct, is going to help us understand from his perspective what he teaches and why this is so important in the industry. And then we have Jay Pino from the USTA BJK National Tennis Center, head pro, 15 years experience in the industry. Michael Pereira from Chattahoochee Country Club in Gainesville, Georgia, head pro, 12 years experience in the industry. And Paul Reber from Multnomah in Portland, Oregon, director of tennis there, and he's 6 years experience in the industry. So I'm going to let these guys do a little talking. Doug, I'm going to let him start. Like I said, why do you think, Doug, our industry needs this type of program?
Well, thanks, Kim. If you started in the 80s with a wood racket, I played in college in the 60s with a T2000, just so everybody knows what that is. And so that's a long time before her. And my whole life, I think people want to get better all the time. And in our industry, There was lots of material and training and seminars and conferences on how to hit a ball. And you could go for days and hours, and you had to go to conferences. I remember going to Roosevelt Hotel in New York for the Tennis Teachers Conference in the 70s because that was the main one at the time. But you got to see the Vandermeers, the Bradens, and so forth and so on. And you could learn all about how to hit forehands and backhands and how to teach, but there was nobody given anything on how to be a manager, how to run a program. You learned it most of the time by osmosis of what the person you work for did. And there's lots of people that only work for one person, so that's all they ever saw. And so they assumed that they did it correctly, whether they did or didn't, and that's what you learned. And that was true in my case also. My first head pro job was I'd only been in one place, so I didn't know what one person did. And sure, I copied them. But I wasn't satisfied with that. And I said, what should I be doing? And so I had 2,700 employees, and I had about 300 tennis professionals who worked for me at each year after I got in the job that I had for many years. And I started a program that everybody should spend 2% of what they make every year in further education for themselves. I also was lucky enough to have a company that would help pay for that. So the company paid for some of it. So that we had to figure out how to get people the skills they needed to succeed in their new jobs, their current jobs, and advance. And it seemed to be something everybody liked. So let me give you my own background a little bit. And I started to go to Disney. I went to 4 or 5 courses at Disney, and they weren't cheap. I went to sales and marketing meetings where I was way out of line and didn't have a clue what they did, but I learned from Zig Ziglar how to sell. I went to labor seminars on what you could and couldn't do in hiring and disciplining people, etc. I had a plan for myself of how to learn. And then I took that plan and said, all right, what should the industry do? So I started with the PTR and the USPTA doing one of the things called the TOM conferences, tennis owners and managers conferences, to teach them how other people do things so that they could take those things and do it for themselves. So I was extremely happy when the University of Florida and Kim came to me and said, would you like to be involved in this? It was an instant yes, because this is what the industry needs. A way for people to get the education they need to go wherever they want to go in the industry, whether they want to stay and be a teaching professor all life, which is just fine, or they want to run the whole world. That's fine too. But if we can help them with the skills to do that, and going back a little bit about myself is, I did my first budgets on ledger paper. And most of the people in this conversation don't even know what a ledger sheet is because it was all done by hand. There were no computers. So every time you made a change, you had to erase all the numbers and start over again. So if you think a budget today is hard to do, have fun doing it back then. But so it morphs into what it is. And for instance, I remember taking my first course in the old days. It wasn't called Excel. It was called other things. WordPerfect was Word, and Quattro Pro was Excel. And so I took a Quattro Pro seminar to learn how to use a computer and a spreadsheet. Well, that was way ahead of other people around me, but at least I learned it. So now it's Excel. And we even have in the course that you're supposed to take a course in Excel so you understand how to use Excel. And the number of people I run into that don't know how to use it, most people don't know how to use Excel because they have no reason to. And so what I want to make sure people are ready when they take a job or when they're in a job is when they're asked by their boss or the owner or whatever it happens to be, well, would you give me your budget for next year in the next month, please? And here's the format. Could you tell me what this means on the profit and loss statement? What does it mean and how do we react to it? If you don't know those things, it makes it tougher to do a good job. And there's lots of people that don't get any experience in that at all. There are head pros to this day that get a lot of financial information from a club, and there's head pros that don't get any financial. They don't know what the revenue is. They don't know what the expenses are. Each club is going to do it differently, and each mom and pop club does it differently according to what the owner or the person in charge of it does, but you got to be ready for it all. And if you don't have a place where they sort of teach you how to look at those things, you can't see it, you don't learn it, and you can't apply it to your next job. So the goal is to get you ready to do all those things, whether you're asked to do it or not. Doesn't make any difference. I mean, can I do it if I had to do it? And some of the questions, for instance, what should your payroll percentage be? You should have an answer to that in an interview. Is it an exact number? No. There's lots of questions you have to know before you can answer it. But if you say you don't know, it doesn't do much for you in an interview. So it gets you ready to take a job, and then it gets you ready to do the job. Those are important things to me. And you have to start somewhere. I mean, I had the luxury, if you call it that, because I had 42 clubs that reported to me. I had to read 42 profit and loss statements every month for 20 years. Well, you get a little better at it when you do that. For the person who's never read one, they're not going to be very good at it, and it takes practice. So my role is to help you figure out how to do those things so you can do it for your next position or in your current position. And that's what I look at doing this job. So
that's awesome. Yes, that's it. You can see why Doug is a vital part of this, and so much good information. And again, we see people from all gamuts, people that are very much more experienced in that in the financial, and some that have very little. And we're happy to help expand, fill in that gap. So that's good. So Paul Reber, let's start with you. I want to get a little input from the students here. Paul's going to share, what benefit have you taken back from the course that has benefited you at Multnomah Athletic Club in Oregon?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I was trying to think of this when you posed the question to us before, and I can't really say there's one specific thing. It would be a gamut of things that I would have to list here. But when you put down the different categories of the different chapters that we had in the class, I was going through each one of those. I'm like, okay, I learned that here, and I learned that here. And, I think the biggest thing for me probably would have been the hiring experience. I was a college coach before I got into clubs, so recruiting is a little bit the same but different than hiring process. So that part really helped me out because I hadn't done a lot of hiring before. Done a lot of recruiting and bringing kids on scholarship, but that's quite a bit different. I think the other thing that it really forced me to look at was trying to become more efficient. We have a very large club here, large membership, and efficiency is number one if you're looking to not only make money, but bring in the best member satisfaction. And so that's something that I've really taken away from this. But like I said, there were so many things out of this class that have enhanced my ability to do this job better. I've highly recommended it to everybody I've talked to. So, yeah.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Okay, Michael Pereira from Chattahoochee Country Club. I wanted to ask Michael, what benefit have you taken back from the course to your workplace?
Well, thanks, Kim. I definitely got a lot out of branding myself and making my LinkedIn profile and selling myself a little bit better in my resume as a head pro looking and aspiring to be a director of racquet sports someday. I also got a lot out of this marketing section module during the course. Used it. I started pickleball in April of 2021, and I started the course in November. And at the time, we had got just the lines down on one of our tennis courts. So 2 pickleball courts with just lines painted over it. And from November on, while I was learning the course, I was learning about marketing and what was most effective, word of mouth marketing and text messaging, how those are more effective at getting people to show up to events and to show up to clinics more than email marketing at this point. Using that information, I was able to grow the program so big that we ran out of space. So they decided to, and this year, build 4 pickleball courts at our facility over the summer. And I think I attribute that to the marketing that I learned from the course and then applying it during the spring of this year and bottlenecking the pickleball courts to where we had to make changes. So I thought that was super valuable for us.
Good. Thanks for sharing that story. That's excellent. We all know that pickleball might have taken over at certain aspects, but there's a certain level of getting it managed and then taking advantage to the facility. So that's good. Jay Pino is here with the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, and he really, Jay, you went through this course relatively fast over the holidays, I believe it was last year. What was your motivation to do that, and kind of what advice, tips, tricks did you have for students who might be wondering, how am I going to do this with a full-time job?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the invite, Kim. I felt that in my case, it was going to be a little bit more challenging to add another responsibility on top of everything else that I already had to oversee. So I really took advantage of, a holiday kind of break late last year, and I think I pretty much did 90% or more of the course in 9 days or so. But I had the time during that time, and that's all I did. I don't necessarily recommend that for other people. I think ideally I'll be able to spread it out a little bit more, but I wanted just to take advantage of that time as much as I could and just complete. I didn't expect to do that far, but I ended up almost doing the entire course during that window.
Well, hopefully you had so much fun doing it. It wasn't a hard deep dive. You were enjoying. It was a deep dive, but you were enjoying the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was part of it. It was enjoyable, so it didn't feel like work. It just was a subject matter that I enjoyed, so it had a much easier flow for me.
Yeah. Well, and our goal is really to help you feel confident, and I do feel like there's an aspect. Would you agree with me that as you went through the curriculum, you would almost see things that you knew or you had mastered, and that feels you a good sense to know that we'd included in the curriculum. So you're like, oh, wow, my skill set is actually very competent in this area. Was there some validation for you on that?
Yes, I think that does ring a bell. As I was going through some of the the activities or the presentations or the material that we had to go through, and I could recognize that I already had either done many of these tasks or already had some experience with those. So that was reassuring for sure.
Yeah, that's good. So again, one of the things we want to emphasize is, though it is an online course, we do feel that you are on your own, self-paced. We want you connected, and we provide a tool called Yellow Dig, which is a discussion board that allows you to speak to the people within the course. And we even allow people who graduate out of the course to stay within Yellow Dig and actually go back and ask questions, look at the information that's being shared on Yellow Dig into the future. So that becomes a tool of, in perpetuity. It's not just limited to the course. And we also have interviews in the course with as many as 20 or 25. I've never stopped to count them all, with industry experts. So not only do we have the committee that created the curriculum that provided, they were the basis, but I've done interviews with multiple directors of racket sports around the country to provide information on a certain subject. And those people can become part of your Rolodex, so to speak. You could pick up the phone at any time and contact any of them and ask them further questions about that area of their job or any other. So the point is to create a network of leaders and not so that you feel that the course is over and then you're on your own, so to speak. So let's say, Paul, you're at a huge club there. How did you find time to do the course, and did you feel like a connection with others through it?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm really glad that you brought Jay on, because I remember during the class you sent out a message that somebody had finished in record time. And Jay, that's truly impressive, man. I had to ask Kim for more time because I logged out and took too long. So, Kim, when you asked that question, I laughed because where did I find time? I just found time. A lot of times it would be early in the morning on the weekend. I'm an early riser, so I'd get into the office and pound out a couple, 3 hours doing some things. Honestly, I looked at this class a lot like training back when I was a player. And, how many times did you want to get up in the morning and go for that workout? It's much easier to roll over and go back to bed, but it's going to be better for you in the long run. Even though I have a director's position now, just that continuing education, always wanting to get better and learn something, really drove me to find the time to make it happen. I might be the longest one that you've had to finish the class, but hey, you've got Jay, so we average out well.
You're not the only one who's asked me for an extension. That's just FYI. We'll
That's good to
grant
know.
anybody working through it, taking the time. Yeah, I mean, will we give you 2 years, 3 years? Probably not, but we understand certainly, and we love that you're having to work hard to get through it, and we value that. Those of you on the call, if you have a question for these guys, for me, for Doug, be sure to put it in the chat. We'll get to those here in a few minutes. We're happy to answer some live questions. I'll continue on with a few now until we hear some from you. But one of the things we want to make very aware is many people realize that the average age of tennis pros in our country is in the 50s. Certainly going to be a lot of retirements happening in the next 10 years of the leaders, the directors of tennis, directors of racket sports. These are people who probably learned in the 70s and 80s and then got their job, maybe in the 90s, but they got their job and they're going to be aging out. And we have a lot of openings that are going to be happening in our industry. And that's one of the reasons that we feel that we want to supply leaders for that mass exodus opening list of openings that we're going to have. So, okay, let's go back. Jay, I don't know if you actually helped us know what curriculum area did you find most helpful? Is there a particular one that is applied to the BJK that maybe has been good for you?
Honestly, I felt that the entire content was well structured and it was beneficial. For me personally, I feel that just having those resources, sitting on my computer now, that if I ever need to refer back to something, I have those. Same thing with the social media, kind of being able to go back and discuss with others that are going through these same issues. I think that is also going to be very helpful. So I think it was just a combination of everything for me.
Okay. All right. And Michael is one of our two who has decided to go on and do the sport management master's degree. So I thought I'd let Michael kind of explain how this has fit in his career, but yet he sees the master's as the next step for him. Michael?
Thank you. I did choose to pursue more education after I completed this course. And part of it was I did get 6 credits, but for 11 years after getting my bachelor's, I had no formal education leading up to the Director of Racquet Sports course. And after 11 years of experience and then starting to hear the education and learn things again, knocking a few cobwebs off, I got excited about learning. And when that happened, I was getting close to the end of the course. I was like, so what happens next? And I find out that, you get 6 credits, you could go, you're 1/6 of the way done with a master's degree at the end of this. And I want to know more about sports finance. I want to know more about sports marketing. Of course, touches on these subjects. It does go in depth on the subjects, but I felt like I was still reaching out and wanting to know more. And my home life was, I had a kid that was on that was born last year in September, and he was probably 6, 7, 8 months at the time. I planned to grow my family, and I knew that by the second kid, that kind of stuff would be extremely difficult. Not that it's difficult now, but it's manageable now. So I decided that if there was any time to keep going, it would be now, and get as much education as I can, be as well prepared as I can for my first director's position in the future. And that master's degree could lead me down the road to even to lengths I never thought were possible, or to lengths I thought I'd have to get lucky to actually have the chance to do those kinds of jobs. So I decided to pursue it, and I think the pressing matter of thinking that it was my last moment to go back to school was the big reason why I just went for it and applied, well, they accepted me, so I'm in the program now.
Yes, no, definitely. So I guess I would love to ask you too. You mentioned the 11 years between. There is a bit of an intimidation factor, like, oh gosh, can I do this work? Can I take a test? Did you experience that just getting into this?
There was a lot of doubt that I would even get in. In my mind,
You're referencing the master's there, right?
I'm
even in the certificate course. Was there that sense of, oh, I'm going to have to?
No, I think that when I heard about it, I heard it from my friend Eric Ingelskerd, and he told me about it, and he said it was in depth and it was really valuable, and that this looked like where the industry was going, like how we were going to separate head pros that were good, and how are they going to pick from the 500 head pros, thousands of head pros out there who's ready to be a director. And he said, he told me about the course, and I thought, if I'm at least educated, then I'm a candidate. But if, there's other people that are educated and I'm not, I might not be able to make that transition as quickly. So I decided to go ahead and, apply for it, and I got in. And I was nervous about it at first because I was like, I'm going back to school. But after I started going with it, it just turned into this insatiable hunger for knowledge. I was just like, I didn't know how much I didn't know. And I just want to know more now. And so I got excited about it after I had, started the course.
That's good. I've heard that from many people. I heard one who took quite a while to go through it, and their comment was, I thought I would speed through it, but as I got into it, I actually wanted to slow down because I really wanted to learn and listen and read. And I guess his intent originally was to validate, oh, I know all this. But then he found, wow, there's like more that I didn't know, he didn't know. All right, so we had a question here about the pricing, a couple of questions regarding that. One, are there payment plans? The University of Florida does not have any ability to give financial aid for a certificate course. However, we can break the payment up into two, usually one that's paid up front, half of the $2,395 up front, and then the other half after like 3 months. It would have to be completed, paid before the completion of the course. If you happen to motor through the course quickly, as Jay did, you would have to, pay that second part before completion. But we could break it up. We assume most people will take in that 6-month range of time. So essentially that will end up being that you would do 2 payments of, around $1,150 each, $1,200 each. And then the state of Florida does not give any residential discounts. Online education is different. Through the university for the master's degree, if you are an on-campus student, there are some ways to get financial aid, but for online education for the master's degree, there are no options for financial aid there. A lot of times, I don't know. You guys tell us. Did your employer reimburse you either before or after? And I don't know this answer. Paul, did you get reimbursed?
I did. I took it to my athletic director and asked if she would cover the cost of it, and she wholeheartedly agreed to do so.
Okay. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, same. The USPTA paid for it.
Okay, Michael.
So I paid for it myself and then got reimbursed after I was actually expecting only like $300. I was like, hey, it was the same year that USPTA covered dues and granted us a year off from our USPTA dues. And I was like, so can I put this towards this? And then they went ahead and paid the whole thing. So I thought it was great.
Okay, very good. We had also one student who said that they were a staff pro who ended up going to apply for a head pro position, and they found that they were given a director position because they were so qualified for that job search that they ended up being asked to be a director, and they weren't even applying for that. So that was an interesting side story that we've had, a good success story. So that's something I thought I would share. So yeah, are there any other questions in the chat? Please let us know any other things that you have. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask Doug another question. And Doug, what would you say is the single biggest challenge out there that is in the area of finance, accounting, operations? Well, what is it that pros generally need to learn in order to make that next level that they don't generally bring to the table before they come?
The biggest thing out there that they have trouble is that they've never seen any financials ever. If they walk into a situation and they've never seen financials, never seen any kind of daily reporting of revenue, if they've never done a budget or don't even have a budget, those things make it more difficult because you're starting from scratch. So there's a little more time and effort needed to do that. And we give you some examples to do those things with as much knowledge of your club as you have. You may not have a full knowledge of the financials, but sometimes if you ask for it, and one of the things I would suggest to everybody who's trying to be in the managed position already is ask your boss or the owner or whoever that is if you can start seeing some different financials. Is there a budget? How's it figured out? You got to ask questions. And if you do that, you're more likely to get people to show you that stuff. So getting that experience is very important. And if you don't have it, we try to help you get as much as you can so that if you're asked to do that at the next position, you can do it.
Yeah, and I think what Doug and I have commented back and forth is that there is just a vast difference between what people know that they come to this course. And so don't think that you have to have a certain competency or been exposed to things. Of course, that's why we have a 3-year minimum, like experience in the industry. We prefer that you do have some level of expertise or experience, doing your job, being around a club, seeing how things work. But we wouldn't be educating if you knew everything. So we don't anticipate that you'll bring everything to the table. Doug and I were happy to be resources for you. As I said, you get 2 hours of Doug's time just to flat out talk to him and ask questions, which is a tremendous value. He could be a resource for any club going forward if you would need further consulting time. I'm happy to help in any way to help clarify information, but particularly I've spent a lot of time talking to people about their career track and are they matching up their personalities with the exact position they're at. I believe that one of the things we do is have some assessments within the course that we provide, we pay for, that students can take and they can learn more about themselves because it's very important that you get in the right position. And you have to know yourself well in order to do that. Sometimes you're already on the right track, but sometimes you need to really stop and reevaluate. Can one of you, who wants to volunteer, either of you, what you learned through the strengths assessment or the mind view? Does either one of you have a story you might be able to tell of the value of those assessments?
Yeah, I can go on that one. I was actually shocked at how accurate the assessment is. I mean, you're going through it, and it nailed me to a T. And were there surprises in there? I have to say, not really. I'm a pretty simple guy, and but if you have any questions as to what would be the best route for you, it was a great exercise to go through. I know I had a lot of my younger coaches go through the same thing after I had done it, just for their knowledge and their own.
Right. And I feel like it's also a team building. If we get everybody in your group to do, say, the strengths assessment and be able to evaluate and converse around the topics that it brings up, it provides you a way to make sure that people, understand each other. We have to understand that we all do things differently. And it's not right or wrong. So again, we're in here trying to enhance you as a leader, help you get on the right career track, and then have the competency and capabilities that you'll need to do the job very well. So I'm providing you here the email addresses for people on the call. Feel free to direct your question straight to one of us. I'm happy to respond just to give you that specific information. Again, the uf-uspta.com takes you to a website where you will see both the master's degree option and the certificate degree option. You can click on one or the other to dive in more, to learn more about those two options. But as I said, the certificate option is really the one that is geared toward the first step, because you can do that, get your feet wet, understand the education, and then if you want to do our master's, you can take a 30-hour master's instead of a 36-hour master's. We give you credit for the 6 hours you've already completed in the certificate class. So we appreciate your time here today. It's been great being able to share with you about this program. As I said, we have almost 65 people in it. We have 17 graduates. It's only been around 15 months. So we're on our way toward making a change for the better in the tennis industry. So we got one more question here. You mentioned, I wanted to check USPTA Elite, and yes, USPTA Elite is the required level. However, some people are not yet USPTA Elite. They can start the upgrade process with USPTA, and then they can progress through both processes, the course and that process. They just have to get through to the elite status before they complete the course, before they can receive the completion certificate. That's a process to begin with Dylan at USPTA to get the details on that upgrade. Also, PTR pros can do it as well. If they're PTR professional, they can do the course as well. But we encourage them to have that 3 years experience plus in the industry, whichever way, wherever they have the certification. All right, so we appreciate your time, and let us know if we can ask any questions. We'd love to see you in the course. Thank you all.